This ain't a mystery. These terms are not mysterious. These terms have nothing to do with Russia as we know it. Now, some are likely to wonder at this point, well, what about Rosh? My translation has, Gog, the Prince of Rosh. You skipped Rosh and all that list of countries and lands. What about Rosh? You're cheating, Mike. Well, actually, no, I'm not. Gog is not the Prince of Rosh. That is a mistranslation. We'll comment on in a few minutes. There are a number of reasons that it's a mistranslation, but among them is the fact that there is no such place name in any ancient text. There is no place name Rosh known in the ancient world. Period. It's not a place name. Rosh is not a place. As Michael Astor has noted, the closest geographical correlation that could be argued is Rashi or Arashi in Neo-Assyrian records, a district on the border of Babylonia and Elam. But as Astor comments, this has nothing in common with Meshech and Tubal. Yeah, he's correct. It doesn't. It's in a different geographical region further to the east, the southeast, in fact. It doesn't point to Russia. That would be far north, okay, north of the Black Sea. Again, the point being made, nobody in the ancient world knew of a place named Rosh. It is not a place name. Now, that's contrary, I know, to what a lot of listeners, may have heard. Listeners may, have heard that Gog is the Prince of Rosh and that Rosh is Russia. I've posted an article with this episode that is also a little bit of a setup, at least kind of get the lay of the land for the battle of the King of the North in Daniel that we'll be bringing into discussion in part 2. But the article posted on the episode page for this episode is by Paul Tanner, and he talks about the invader from the north. The subtitle of his article is "Do we owe Russia an apology?" And it's like, yeah, we do. But that article is kind of nice because it takes you through how the Russia idea was popularized by evangelical dispensational interpreters, and he points out some of the problems with it. He doesn't point out all of them. Other scholarly sources will beat that dead horse, despite the fact that it's dead. You should know as a listener, the idea that Ezekiel 38 and 39 is about Russia or a Russian invasion has literally no merit in terms of exegesis, and it has no precedent in terms of a place name in the entire ancient world. It's a fabrication. It's a Cold War hermeneutic. Okay, the Russia idea became popular in the 70s. I remember reading it in prophecy books as a teenager, a new Christian. The bad guys, for the end of the world in the Cold War era, that they were Russians. And the prophecy, quote unquote, experts, the prophecy pundits of the 70s and 80s that wanted the end times to be imminent, right around the corner. Well, who's the enemy? Who's the logical enemy? Well, it's the Russians. Oh, Russia, Rosh, there we go. That's about all the thought that went into it. It is not a view that is based in primary source material and even coherent. Let's say a little bit more about it, though. Now, despite the fact that you've heard this, and again, there's no ancient place named Rosh, there are other problems. Yamauchi, who actually has a good book, for this subject matter, his book is entitled "Foes from the Northern Frontier: Invading Hordes from the Russian Steppes." Okay, now his book isn't about Ezekiel 38 and 39. It's about just what it says: ancient peoples of the northern frontier. Yamauchi is a historian. I think he's still teaching. He's an evangelical. He does a lot of work on Persia in the Bible, Africa in the Bible. Here he's doing these northern countries, Asia Minor and further north. And in this book, he does tackle the Russia interpretation and basically slays it, because it's not very hard to do. Again, he's a historian at the University of Miami at Ohio. Might be a familiar name to you because he's been around for quite a while. But Yamauchi points out in his study of the geography, the place name Rosh would have had no meaning to an ancient Hebrew audience since, quote, the name Rus, R-U-S, was first brought to the region of the Kiev, again, that's right around the Black Sea there, first brought to the region of the Kiev by the Vikings in the Middle Ages. In other words, you don't even find Rus, R-U-S, earlier than the Vikings. So for an ancient person of the biblical period, talking about a place name Ros or Rosh would have been utterly meaningless to them. Going even further, Rus, R-U-S, and the longer Russia, Yamauchi said, notes. Again, I'm basing this on Yamauchi's material here. Rus and Russia are Indo-European words, while Hebrew is from the Semitic language family. Consequently, a Rosh-Russia equation is a linguistic fallacy. It's a false etymology. Additionally, aside from Genesis 10's placement of Meshech and Tubal in Anatolia, Ezekiel's own description of these same places in Ezekiel 27, verses 12 through 15, have them located among the nations adjacent to Anatolia. The place names are thus not the Russian cities, but ancient ethnic groups firmly situated in the ancient Near Eastern geographical reality of the Hebrew Bible. I want to talk about this fallacy a little bit. This shouldn't be earth-shaking, but I know a lot of people are exposed to well-meaning but really poor Bible teaching in this section, and just teaching about biblical languages in general that's really poor. The same set of sounds in one language that form a word do not equate to either the same word in another language or a word that sounds the same that has the same meaning as the first word. Now, in other words, that's a little convoluted. Let me illustrate the point. Chin and chin in English and Chinese, respectively, don't mean the same thing. Even though they sound the same, they don't mean the same thing. So Rosh and Russia, even though they sound the same or very similar, don't mean the same thing. Chin in English, of course, is according to Webster, the lower portion of the face underneath the lower lip and including the prominence of the lower jaw. In Chinese, chin means gold or metal or money, something bright. Okay? Completely different because they're different languages. The human mouth and tongue and lips and palate, you can only make so many sounds. Linguists will tell you there's 30 or so that you can make. And since every human being speaks, they have their own language, they're going to use the same set of sounds. But what they mean by the sounds that they articulate is not transferable from one language to the next. And you think, well, Mike, who in the world would think that? Oh, trust me. Trust me. A lot of, quote, Bible teachers are making arguments like that in this passage. It's just absurd. It's absurd.